Hello, my name is Michael O'Keefe, aka The Movie Wist. If you enjoy this interview and want to hear more top-notch film industry conversations, please press the thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell to stay in the know. Hello, Dea Gjinovci. What compelled you to create your documentary, Wake Up on Mars?
So for me, I started doing Wake Up on Mars because I read an article in the New Yorker about the resignation syndrome, and it was 3 years ago, and it really troubled me because it was um, like a syndrome that was affecting asylum-seeking children in Sweden. And it felt so out of the world, that like you had children falling into a coma because their immigration status was refused in their country of asylum. And talking about it and kind of thinking about it, I thought it would be like a really interesting documentary subject, and especially because one of the families that was interviewed in the New Yorker was from Kosovo, and I am from Kosovo as well. And I felt like there was some cultural resonance over there.
Okay, so break it down technically. What is resignation syndrome?
So the resignation syndrome is a psychological syndrome that has been diagnosed in Sweden about 10 years ago. And it's mostly affecting asylum-seeking children, where they sort of fall into a sort of apathy that can transform into a coma when they learn that that their asylum request has been refused and that they might be deported from Sweden. And what's quite interesting is that it's only been diagnosed in Sweden, and most of the cases are there. And for the past 10 years, there's been 50 to 100 cases every year. Most of the children, they stay into this form of apathy or coma for months to years. So, for example, the protagonist of my film, Ibadeta and Janetta, one of them stayed in a coma for 3 years and the other one for 5 years and a half. So that's one of the longest cases that's ever been in Sweden.
That's a long coma. So your documentary is called Wake Up on Mars. Does the Mars you refer to represent alienation and disassociation?
So in a way, for me, Mars has became actually for Furkan a place for him to escape to. That a place that he needed a sense that it was a corner of his imagination where he could go back to and think of as a place that he could distance himself from what was happening. And later on in the film, and the way it's portrayed as well in my film, is that Mars becomes the place where he could potentially see his sister awake, and kind of he's reaching the whole time, he's reaching for that place, and it becomes a sort of place of hope for him.
Cool. So you do believe there is ultimately hope in this documentary?
Yeah, there's definitely hope in this documentary. I mean, for me, that's like actually this film is all about hope because the families and the children who fall into this resignation syndrome, it's because they gave up on hope. It's a state of despair, and it's a state of hopelessness, and all of it is all of the resignation syndrome is related to hope. And as human beings, we need hope to keep on going, to have a driving force, to live our lives. And it's very scary to think that these children have given up on that and preferred not to exist because of the situation. And so what I've tried to portray in my film is exactly metaphorically what hope can bring to a family, and when there's none of that, what it does to people as well.
Wow. So you talk about the Kosovo connection. Tell me about your documentary shorts without Kosovo.
So my documentary short was actually, I made this film with my father, who was a political refugee from Kosovo. He left in 1968. So really during sort of the student protests that were happening in Europe, and there were also student protests in Kosovo back then. And he was one of the instigators. So he had to flee, and then he was in a refugee camp for a few years in Italy, and then moved to Switzerland after that had received asylum in Switzerland. And so he's been there for many, many years. But what happened is that for nearly 30 years, he didn't go back to Kosovo. And that created a lot of distance as well for me with the culture there, because I just knew I was Albanian, but I didn't really know the place. I didn't really know his family. And so that was one of my ambition as well with the film Without Kosovo, was to rebuild a connection, for him to rebuild a connection with Kosovo, so I could build one too. And so what we decided to do, what I decided to make him do kind of, was to go back to the last refugee camp where he was in Italy. And from then on to retrace his journey as of exile backwards, all the way back to his native village in Kosovo.
Very cool. How did you get into documentary filmmaking?
So I got into documentary filmmaking because when from the age of 15 years old, I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. I thought more about, being a fiction filmmaker. And then I tried to, I was thinking, I should go to film school. And in the end, I felt like I wanted a broader education before really, going into the film industry. And so I first did a bachelor in economics and political science. And then after that, it's kind of when I had sort of like the turning point where I knew that if I really wanted to make films, I had to do it. I had to start doing it now, and I couldn't just, go into politics or, doing a master in politics or whatever. So I chose to do a master in anthropology and documentary filmmaking. And that was really my sort of like a gateway into making documentaries. And once I started making documentaries, I realized how fulfilling and, it was bringing me everything that I was missing in the sort of like the social sciences fields, because I was close to people, and it was more about empathy and really trying to understand other people's, lived experiences from a really close perspective, and also have your own interpretation of it. And that as well, for me, documentary filmmaking doesn't really have boundaries. So I really play with, the fact that we can use fictionalized elements, that we can really use elements that are, that are not per se like seen in documentary films, like usually. And I play around with that, and I play around with the fact that we can also integrate other form of art into documentary films.
Very interesting, and it sort of shows that that what you just said sort of shows that life does not have a clear path.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I'm very much. I think it's always about like being true to what you really want to do, and kind of like, I think hard work is necessary, but once you've chosen your path, whatever it is, to kind of go for it and go for it with determination. And it gets pretty difficult, especially making documentary films. It's not, you don't get the budgets that you get for fiction films to make them. There's a lot of fundraising involved, and I was a producer on my film as well. So to be able to kind of, pay people and support yourself and kind of do all these things, it becomes quite complicated.
Yeah, geez. Would you make the shift over to narrative filmmaking?
I would. Yeah, I definitely would. But I would always keep the sort of documentary background. So anything I do in the narrative form, I think would be about experiences that are still close to my own need to understand certain aspects of my culture and of my experiences. So especially relating to exile and to the Balkans. I think this is where I feel I can be the best storyteller.
Did you see the movie Otak?
I haven't seen the movie Otak. What is it?
Oh, it's from Serbia, and I saw it at Berlin, and it's I don't know, a really good story. I interviewed the director in Berlin. It's basically about a guy who his like children get separated from him, and then he walks all the way to the capital of Serbia from his like little town, and is just a simple but beautiful movie from an emotional and cinematographic perspective. I highly recommend it.
Okay, I will definitely watch it. Otak.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which means
absolutely. Was
father
it
in
in
English.
Berlin? In Berlin in 2020?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I was in Berlin, and then coronavirus happened.
Yes, there was a last festival that managed to.
Yeah. Lucky me. I picked better than I picked Berlin over Cannes.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a great transition. When did you start doing film festival stuff? And what can you tell my audience about that carnival-esque experience?
Uh, well, I mean, film festivals are really amazing places. I mean, personally, I'm someone who's quite drawn to other people and sort of like meeting new people all the time. And
Mm,
what's interesting with specifically with documentary filmmakers and documentary spaces in festivals, is that there's a lot of like passion and solidarity.
mm,
There's not, it's not a competitive sort of environment. It's very much a place where you will find people who are as involved in their films and as drawn to interesting stories and to who are empathetic and who really are passionate about documentaries, because it's such a difficult path financially even to be a documentary filmmaker, that people who kind of remain within that space have a true passion and they feel that they couldn't do anything else. And so it's I really like doing going to film festivals, and I've been to Sundance, for example, twice, and every time I thought it's definitely less scary than like what you anticipate. First I was really like scared the first time I went there, and I felt like I wouldn't have access to all the places I wanted to go or to the people. But actually, like, obviously you have very popular and hyped up parties and whatever, but it's not
mm,
really that makes the festival. It's definitely more like the screenings and the events around them, and really like the random meetings that you will get, just because you're there. And I think the important part of it is like you have to be there to kind of like be part of the film industry. And I would say that one of the only one of the big drawbacks is that it's quite prohibitive to go to Sundance. It's quite expensive, and so if you don't have
mhm.
support, outside support, and you're just a filmmaker and stuff, like it might be difficult for you to just even stay there because of the cost. So there's other
Mm,
festivals, like for example in Kosovo there's DocuFest, which is an amazing festival where you get loads of international filmmakers and distributors and professionals that are at all the best festivals but still come to this tiny festival in Kosovo. And this is maybe where you're more likely to like meet them and actually like have like interesting conversations with them, without it being like too difficult, because there's not too many people. So I don't know, I mean, I'm very sad that that's one of the biggest sort of disappointments for me, is that with this film Wake Up on Mars I couldn't get the actual physical celebration at
mhm.
festivals of the film, because
Yeah.
I would have loved that.
Yeah, obviously, come on. You want to
Mhm.
party a little bit with it.
Exactly. And also
Mhm.
you work so hard for 3 years on a film, then afterwards you want to celebrate, you want to be, you need that ritual. And I think that's like what we're missing as well in the film industry right now, is like when films come out, to have like a ritual with the film, that like once it's released at a festival, you have this big screening, you have the feedback, you have the relationship with the audience, you can kind of separate yourself from it. And once when it's online, it's true that it's a different feeling. You don't feel that sense of
Yeah.
communion.
Yeah, I think we're kind of wondering, when is this all going to end? When is there
Mm.
ever going to be like a normal film festival circuit again? You know?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think people are I mean, now at least, are even more conscious of sort of the impact, the environmental impact that even just going to festivals, with your film was kind of. I think it was a cycle that became a bit crazy, because now seeing all the virtual film festivals that I participated in, and if I
Mm-hmm.
had actually traveled to all these countries
Mm-hmm.
within 1 year, like I don't know, 20 plus countries, it's like it's an insane amount of traveling just to show a
Yeah,
film. So
for sure.
also like kind of like understanding that the way it was before was not sustainable, and that there's maybe a different way and a different choices that we'll have to make when we'll organize festivals, and maybe think in a more localized manner, like how to make those festivals more friendlier to people who live in those places and are more open to the local audiences and public, rather than just focusing on the international realm every time.
Could you name some of the more interesting creators you interacted with during your time at the film festival circuits?
I mean, I have my sort of the filmmakers that I've sort of done residencies with and films that, you know, we were kind of part of the circuit together. And I mean, one of the films that I love that is coming out now is Duty Free by Jean-Pierre Regis, and it's such a wonderful film, like a beautiful film. It's a mother-son sort of like a film about, you know, a mother who was just fired from her job as a cleaning lady, and her son who decides to take her on a bucket list trip over for a year, and to kind of like to make her live all the things that she couldn't do because she was working full time as a cleaning lady for like 50 years. And it's so touching, and it's really beautiful, and I think it's like one of those like gem of movies that should really be known. Then obviously there's other filmmakers that I really respect and admire in terms of their work, because I feel like we have similar ways of thinking about work. Like Alma Harrell, I really like the forms of her films and the way she's quite daring with mixing sort of more narrative elements in the documentaries she's making and working with the psychodrama. Same thing with Christelle Moselle as well. Is one of the filmmakers I really adore her work. So yeah, there's other films as well that are coming out. I really liked Time by Carrot Bradley as well, and The Earth is Blue as an Orange as well. That has gone on to a lot of different film festivals this year.
Awesome. Have you seen Beanpole?
I haven't seen Beanpole yet. It's on my watch list.
You got to check it out.
Yes,
really
I know.
good.
Oh,
Yeah.
I really, I'm excited to watch it. I thought I would see it in the cinemas, but then they shut down. Yeah.
I got to interview Kantemir Balakov. He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him in Toronto.
Is he working on a new? Is he working on a new film?
I don't know. I interviewed him in 2019 during when Beanpole came to Toronto. Yeah, it was fun. It was I don't know. I think that's the only Russian filmmaker I've interviewed, and it was a little intimidating, but he's like he was a little intense. But once we started talking, it was a great time. And it's a really worthwhile movie. I think you'll really like it. But Dea, thank you for your time. Do you have any final thoughts about Wake Up on Mars before I let you go?
Well, I mean the only thing I can say is that actually, like, the film has the family in the film actually unfortunately didn't get their asylum.
Oh no.
Yeah, and that's really like difficult now for them, and so it's true that I really wanted this film to kind of end on a sort of positive note afterwards, and kind of be able to announce that they finally got their asylum in Sweden. And so I feel like their journey has not finished, and so we're trying to sort of like get together an impact campaign really to ensure that they can stay and remain in Sweden and feel safe, and that every child deserves to feel safe and safe enough in the country that they have chosen to live in. And so yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.